Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt deep down that they were sent to heal you? That they were your miracle, your angel, your second chance at life? Jason Carter believed that. From the moment he met Emily, everything broken in him began to feel whole again. But sometimes the people who save us are the ones hiding what could destroy us. And sometimes, love isn't the miracle it seems, it's the test that reveals who we really are. So tell me, if your angel started to look like a stranger, would you still call it love, or would you run before the truth found you first?
The rain hadn't stopped all night. It came down in sharp silver streaks, blurring the traffic lights and painting the empty Chicago streets with reflections of red and gold. Jason Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel as his old Ford hummed along Michigan Avenue. Another long night shift behind him. Another reminder that this wasn't the life he'd planned. The radio murmured softly, but his mind was elsewhere. His daughter, Mia, was spending the weekend with his ex-wife. He should have felt free. Instead, the silence in the car pressed against him like guilt. Then, through the windshield, he saw her. A woman, standing alone under a flickering streetlight outside a small diner. Her white coat clung to her body, soaked through. One hand held a torn wedding invitation, the other, nothing, not even an umbrella. Jason slowed down. The sight tugged at something deep inside him, something old and wounded. He pulled over, lowered the window. "Hey, are you all right?" She looked up. The rain slid down her face like tears, though she wasn't crying. Her eyes, tired, glassy, but hauntingly calm, met his. "I thought he'd show," she said, voice trembling. "Guess I was wrong." Her lips trembled into something that was almost a smile. Jason stepped out, walked toward her, and held out his umbrella. "You'll catch a cold out here." She hesitated, then took it. The wind pushed her hair across her face, and he noticed she was clutching that torn invitation so tightly. The paper had nearly bled its ink. "Come on," he said softly, nodding toward the diner behind them. "Let's get you warm." Inside, the air smelled of coffee and rain-soaked coats. The waitress gave them a curious glance, but said nothing. Jason slid into a booth. The woman followed, silent at first. After a moment, she whispered. His name was Mark. "I was supposed to marry him today." Jason froze. "Today?" She nodded, eyes drifting to the window. But he changed his mind. Said I was too much to handle. Maybe he was right. Jason wanted to say something comforting, but all that came out was, "Then maybe he didn't deserve you." That made her smile, just a little. "You don't even know me." "Maybe I don't have to," he replied. Her gaze softened. "I'm Emily." "Jason." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his, brief. Hesitant. "Guess God sent you." He didn't know what to say to that. He just watched her, the storm reflecting in her eyes. And in that strange, fleeting silence, Jason Carter, the man who'd stopped believing in fate, felt something stir inside him for the first time in years. Outside, the rain kept falling. But inside that diner, something else began. The storm outside refused to calm. Rain tapped against the diner's fogged windows like impatient fingers, and thunder grumbled somewhere far beyond the skyline. Inside, the neon light flickered, painting Emily's face in soft pinks and blues. Jason watched her hands as she wrapped them around the coffee mug. They were delicate, trembling slightly. She hadn't touched her slice of pie. He wanted to ask questions about the wedding, about the man who left her, but there was something in her expression that warned him not to. Instead, he said quietly, "You know, they say rain on your wedding day is supposed to be good luck." She gave a short, breathy laugh. Guess the universe didn't get that memo. They sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that feels thick, like grief trying to find a place to settle. Then Emily spoke again. "I came to Chicago last year. Thought I'd build a new life here. I was supposed to get married today in Cleveland. Small church. My mom's friends, all that. But," she stopped, staring down at the steam rising from her coffee. "He didn't show up. Just a text that said, 'I'm sorry. I can't do this.'" Jason's stomach tightened. "That's brutal." "Yeah," she said softly. "But maybe that's how it's supposed to be. People leave. Sometimes love just runs out." He knew that feeling too well. "Maybe," Jason said, "but sometimes love just finds new roads." Emily looked up at him, and for a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. Pain. Hope. Maybe both. The waitress came by with a refill, giving them a small, knowing smile. When she left, Emily said, "You're not married?" Jason hesitated, then shook his head. "Not anymore. Melissa and we tried. 2 years ago, we signed the papers." "I'm sorry," Emily said. He shrugged. "It's all right. I've got my daughter, Mia. She's 8. Smartest kid you'll ever meet." "Does she look like you?" Emily asked. He smiled faintly. "Unfortunately for her, yeah." That made Emily laugh, a small, genuine sound that felt like sunlight breaking through cloud. For the first time, Jason realized she wasn't just beautiful. She was lonely, like someone who'd been holding her breath for too long, waiting for life to start again. When they stepped out of the diner, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Emily turned to him, her hair still damp, her eyes soft. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For stopping." Jason opened his umbrella, holding it over her. "Guess I was meant to." She smiled. "You're a good man, Jason Carter." And with that, she walked into the night, the glow of the streetlight catching her one last time before she disappeared around the corner. The waitress called from the doorway, "You making friends with lost angels now?" Jason half smiled, glancing at the empty street. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Maybe I am." Chicago's winter crept in fast. The rain turned to sleet, the days grew shorter, and Jason started finding excuses to see Emily more often. It began innocently enough, a text here, a late-night coffee there. But soon, her name was everywhere in his day. On his mind at work. In his dreams. Even Mia, his daughter, had noticed. "Dad," she said one evening, watching him check his phone, "you smile weird now." He laughed it off. But he knew. Emily had woken something in him that he thought was long gone. Their nights together were simple. Drives along Lakeshore Drive, cheap Chinese takeout, long talks that ran till dawn. She'd listen when he spoke about his struggles, the divorce, the loneliness, the guilt of not being enough for his daughter. Emily never judged. She just understood. "You know," she said one night, her voice soft, "some people walk into your life to remind you that you still have one." Jason smiled. "That sounds like something from a movie." She looked away. "Yeah, maybe one with a bad ending." He almost asked what she meant, but the sadness in her tone told him not to. Still, there were moments, flashes, that didn't make sense. Sometimes she'd flinch at loud noises, or stare at her phone too long before turning it face down. Once, Jason found her on the porch after midnight, crying quietly into her hands. When he asked what was wrong, she wiped her eyes and said, "Nothing. Just missing someone who doesn't exist anymore." He didn't know what that meant, but he let it go. One weekend, they drove out to a small town in Indiana. It was cold and quiet, the kind of place where time slows down. They stopped by a lake, half frozen, the water black and glassy under the gray sky. Emily stood at the edge, her coat fluttering. "I used to come to a place like this with my dad," she said. "He used to say the water remembers." Jason chuckled. "Remembers what?" Her voice dropped. "Everything you try to forget." He turned to look at her, the wind catching her hair, her eyes fixed on the horizon. There was a sadness there so deep it made his chest ache. That night, as they drove back, Jason glanced at her reflection in the window. For a moment, he could have sworn her lips moved, whispering something he couldn't hear. "Emily." She looked at him, startled. "What?" "Nothing," he said. But the feeling lingered, that somewhere inside her smile, there was a secret waiting to crawl out. When he dropped her off, she kissed his cheek and said, "You're my light, Jason. My spark in the dark." And as he watched her walk away under the streetlight, Jason couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the one saving her. Maybe she was saving herself from something he didn't yet understand. By early spring, Jason and Emily's lives had quietly folded into each other. He'd started keeping a toothbrush at her apartment. She'd begun leaving her sweater on his couch. To anyone else, they looked like any normal couple trying to heal old wounds. But beneath that warmth, something always felt fragile. Jason couldn't explain it. Sometimes, Emily would drift off in the middle of a conversation, her eyes unfocused, as if she were listening to something far away. Other times, she'd ask strange questions about trust, forgiveness, or what it meant to start over. One night, Jason noticed a box under her bed. She'd left for work early, and he was looking for a charger. Curiosity tugged at him. Inside were scraps of paper, torn letters, faded photographs, and a silver necklace shaped like a cross. He picked one of the letters up. The handwriting was messy, uneven, almost frantic. The first words made his heart skip. "Luke." I forgive you. I just can't keep waiting. Jason froze. Who was Luke? He slipped the letter back where he found it, guilt twisting in his chest. When Emily came home later, she was quieter than usual, almost like she knew he'd seen something. That evening, they had dinner in silence. The only sound was the low hum of the radio. Finally, she said softly, "You ever feel like your past is following you?" Jason looked up. "Sometimes." "Why?" Emily stared at her plate, her voice distant. "Because no matter how far I run, it always finds me." He reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to run anymore." For a second, she looked at him with something close to fear. Then she smiled faintly and squeezed his hand back. "I hope you're right." Later that night, Jason woke to the sound of something burning. He followed the faint glow into the backyard. Emily was standing by the fire pit, her white nightgown fluttering in the wind, feeding the flames with sheets of paper. "Emily." She jumped, startled. "Jason, you scared me." "What are you doing?" "Just getting rid of old ghosts." She forced a smile. Jason moved closer and saw the last letter curling in the fire. For a split second before the flames ate it, he caught the name again, Luke. He said nothing. He just watched the fire until it died down, leaving only the smell of smoke and something else, something heavy like loss. That night, Emily curled into him and whispered, "Promise me, no matter what happens, you won't stop believing in me." He kissed her forehead. "I promise." But as she drifted to sleep, Jason lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Because he already knew. Some promises break themselves. Summer came slow that year, warm, golden days that melted into soft, lingering nights. For a while, everything felt right again. Jason and Emily had built something that looked like peace. She moved into his apartment, bringing with her that scent of jasmine and rain that somehow made even the coldest room feel alive. She'd hum when she cooked, off-key but sweet, and he'd stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. It was the kind of simple happiness that makes you forget the world outside still exists. "Don't look at me like that," she'd laugh. "Like what?" "Like you still can't believe I'm here." He'd grin. "That's because I can't." They'd go for long walks by the lake after dinner, watching the city lights shimmer across the water. Sometimes Mia joined them, skipping ahead, her laughter echoing through the cool evening air. Jason had never seen his daughter warm to anyone the way she did with Emily. The two of them would bake cookies together, dance in the living room, and make up silly songs that Jason pretended not to like but secretly loved. It felt real. It felt safe. But every now and then, Emily would freeze, like she was remembering something painful. Her smile would fade, her eyes would drift off somewhere he couldn't follow. One night, as they lay together, Jason whispered, "You ever think about the past?" She turned toward him, her voice soft. "Not if I can help it. The past takes too much." He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Enough to know that angels don't always wear wings." Jason chuckled. "Oh, so you're my angel now." She smiled faintly, eyes glistening in the dim light. "No, you're mine." The words stayed with him. The next morning, she left a small note on his nightstand. "You're my miracle, Jason. My light in the dark." He didn't know why, but the handwriting looked slightly different from her usual scrawl, smaller, neater. Almost like she'd written it carefully, deliberately. Later that week, while Emily was out grocery shopping, Jason's mom stopped by. She looked around the apartment, the flowers on the counter, the laughter in the air, and said, "You seem happy, sweetheart. But be careful." "Careful," his mom sighed. "When something feels too perfect, sometimes it's hiding the cracks." Jason smiled, brushing it off. But that night, when he kissed Emily goodnight, her eyes lingered on him longer than usual, searching, almost pleading. "Don't ever stop believing in me," she whispered. He didn't know why those words sounded less like a promise, and more like a warning. By autumn, Jason was sure, Emily wasn't just a chapter in his story. She was the whole book. He'd spent weeks planning it, the ring, the setting, the timing. A quiet dinner at the lake house, the same restaurant where they'd first said "I love you." Mia was spending the weekend with her grandmother, and Jason wanted this night to belong only to them. Emily arrived wearing a pale blue dress that shimmered under the soft lights. When she smiled, it was the kind of smile that made the world stop for a second. "You're quiet tonight," she said, tilting her head. "Just thinking," he replied, "about how lucky I am." She laughed softly, not knowing what was coming. Halfway through dinner, Jason stood up, heart pounding so loud he could barely hear the music playing. He dropped to one knee. "Emily Carter," he began, his voice shaking. "I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I want to spend every sunrise, every mistake, every second with you. Will you marry me?" The room fell silent. Emily's hand covered her mouth. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then, tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Of course, yes." The crowd clapped. A few strangers cheered. Jason slipped the ring onto her trembling finger, and for that moment, it felt like the world finally made sense. Later that night, they walked along the boardwalk. The lake shimmered under the moonlight. Emily leaned her head against his shoulder. "I didn't think I'd ever get this again," she said quietly. "This, love, hope, safety." Jason smiled. "You have all of that now." But her eyes were distant. "I wish that were true." He turned toward her. "What do you mean?" She smiled quickly, covering it. "Nothing. Just, you make me feel safe. That's all." He kissed her forehead, but her words lingered. The next morning, Emily was gone. No note, no call. Just silence. Jason tried her phone, straight to voicemail. He called her job, her friends. No one had seen her. Panic clawed at his chest. Hours later, she walked through the door, pale and shaken. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. "I just needed air." "Emily, what's going on?" She didn't answer. She just hugged him tight, too tight, and whispered, "Promise me you'll never ask where I go when I disappear." Jason froze. "Why would I? Please." Her voice broke. "Just promise." He nodded slowly, unsure why his heart suddenly felt like it was holding its breath. She smiled faintly and rested her head on his chest. But when she whispered, "You'll understand one day," it didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like a goodbye. The week before the wedding, Jason woke to a dull ache in his chest. Emily had been distant, texting less, leaving the apartment earlier than usual. He brushed it off as pre-wedding nerves. Until the phone rang. The number was unknown. He answered. "Hello." A harsh, raspy voice cracked through the line. "You don't know who you're marrying," the man said. Then silence. Jason's heart froze. "Who is this? What do you mean?" The line went dead. He called back. No answer. Voicemail. Panic bubbled beneath his skin. He texted Emily, but she didn't respond. He drove to her apartment. It was empty. Her car was gone. No sign of her. Finally, she called him later that evening. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Hey, sorry, I went out. Traffic." Jason tried to sound casual. "You scared me." "Who was that on the phone?" Emily hesitated. Then softly, "Just a wrong number." Jason wanted to believe her. He wanted to brush it off, laugh it away. But something in her tone froze him. There was an edge, almost fear, under her words. That night, Emily's phone was off. Jason tried again and again. He sat in the apartment, gripping the torn photo she'd left behind weeks ago. The one of her smiling at a lake somewhere in Indiana. Hours passed. The quiet settled over him like a heavy fog. He began pacing, imagining worst-case scenarios, every fear taking shape in the shadows of his living room. Finally, Emily returned. She was soaked from the rain, hair plastered to her face, clothes clinging as if she'd run through a storm. "Emily," Jason said, voice tight. "What the hell happened? Where were you?" She looked at him, eyes wide and trembling. I just needed space. That's all." "Space." His hands shook. "It's a week before the wedding. You disappear, you don't answer your phone, and you just need space." She swallowed hard, avoiding his gaze. "Jason, please. Don't make this harder than it already is." He wanted answers. He wanted truth. But her voice, fragile, desperate, held him back. All he could do was nod, but inside, a cold knot had formed. Something wasn't right. Something from her past, or maybe someone, was closing in. And Jason had no idea how fast the calm world he'd built could collapse. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain pounding against the window. Somewhere outside, the city whispered secrets. And Jason couldn't shake the feeling that Emily's shadows were no longer hers alone. 2 days before the wedding, Jason returned home to find a plain envelope sitting on the counter. No return address. No hint of its origin. Just his name scrawled in familiar handwriting, Emily's. His hands shook as he picked it up. Something about the envelope's weight made his stomach twist. Inside, neatly folded, was a photograph. Jason's breath caught. It was Emily, but not as he knew her. She was in a hospital gown, pale and fragile, clutching the hand of a man he didn't recognize. A faint smile touched her lips, one that didn't reach her eyes. He flipped the photo over. Faded ink read, "Till Death Do Us Part, 2019. Jason sank into the nearest chair. 2019. That wasn't long ago. Not long enough for the past to be this unresolved. He dialed her number immediately. No answer. He sent texts. Nothing. Finally, she called him back. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Jason, I got your messages." "Emily, what is this? Who is that man?" His voice cracked. "Why does it say 2019? There was a long pause. Jason could hear her breathing. He was my husband," she whispered finally. "Luke." Jason felt the floor drop from under him. "Your husband?" "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. He died. I thought he was gone forever." Jason didn't know what to say. His mind raced. Why would she hide this? Why now? Emily's words came in a rush. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to lose us. But he was sick, Jason. The doctors said he wouldn't make it. I thought I had to move on. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Her voice broke. "I wanted a second chance. That's all. Never meant to hurt you." Jason sat back, heart pounding, gripping the photograph like it was a lifeline. His mind replayed every moment, every word, every smile, and suddenly, the tenderness he'd felt for her twisted into a knot of fear, confusion, and betrayal. "Emily," he whispered. I don't know if I can." "I know," she interrupted softly. "I know. I don't expect forgiveness. Just understand that I love you." The line went silent. Jason stared at the photograph again. The pale hospital walls. The man's hand in hers. The year. Something in him whispered, "This isn't over." Because the moment he thought he knew Emily, the woman he loved, the angel he'd found in the rain, he realized he hadn't even scratched the surface of her secrets. And somewhere, in the shadows of her past, someone was still waiting. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and clear, the kind of autumn sunlight that filtered through stained glass windows like a promise. Jason stood in the groom's suite at St. Mary's Church, adjusting his tie for the 100th time. His palms were sweaty, heart racing with anticipation. Mia sat nearby, twirling a strand of her hair nervously. "Dad, are you sure she's coming?" she asked, looking up at him. Jason forced a smile. "Of course. She's going to be here any minute." Outside, Emily was putting on her dress. The gown shimmered softly, delicate lace tracing her shoulders. Her veil trembled as she looked at herself in the mirror. For a moment, she hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. The church doors opened, and the soft notes of the organ filled the room. Guests stood, craning their necks. Jason's stomach tightened. His heart leapt. Then she appeared. Emily walked down the aisle with a delicate grace, but her eyes were distant, a quiet storm behind the calm exterior. She smiled at Jason, but the warmth he expected wasn't there. Jason swallowed, trying to shake off the unease. "It's just nerves," he told himself. The pastor began the vows. Jason reached for Emily's hand. It was cold, trembling slightly in his grip. Suddenly, the heavy doors at the back creaked open. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the pews. Jason froze. A man stepped inside, gaunt, pale, leaning slightly on the pew for support. His eyes locked onto Emily. "Emily," he said, voice weak but piercing, "what are you doing?" Emily's smile faltered. Her grip on Jason's hand loosened. "Luke," she whispered. Jason's mind blanked. The guests murmured, unsure of what they were seeing. The man took another step forward, and the truth hit Jason like a blow to the chest. He wasn't dead. Luke, Emily's supposedly deceased husband, was alive. Emily's hands shook as tears streamed down her face. "He wasn't supposed to come back," she cried. "The doctor said he died." Luke's eyes glistened with something Jason couldn't place: anger, hurt, betrayal. "You left me, took everything, changed your name. You said you loved me." The room fell silent. Jason's world tilted. The woman he had called his angel, the woman who had saved him, was standing on the edge of a secret so explosive it could destroy everything. Emily looked at Jason, tears mixing with rain from the open doors. I loved you. Both of you." And then, as if the storm outside had finally found its echo inside, she bolted. The bouquet fell to the aisle. Guests gasped. Jason ran after her, but the back doors closed too quickly. Only the faint rustle of her veil and the cold wind reminded him she had ever been there. For Jason Carter, the perfect day had crumbled into chaos, and the shadow of the past had just claimed its first victory. The church was a storm of whispers and gasps. Jason's chest felt heavy, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. Luke, Emily's husband, the man she'd claimed had died, stood before them, real and terrifyingly alive. "Emily," he said again, his voice raw. "How could you do this to me? To us?" Emily's hands were trembling. She didn't meet his eyes. "I didn't know you were alive. The doctors, they said you wouldn't make it. I thought. You thought." Luke's voice rose, sharp and cutting through the stunned silence. "You left me to die. And now you're here, about to marry him." Luke asked furiously, while Jason's chest tightened. Emily had lied to him. Every tender moment, every word of love, had been tangled in deception. "Emily," Jason began, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Is this true?" She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant to hurt you, Jason. I just wanted a new life. I didn't know he'd survive. I couldn't risk losing us." Luke shook his head in disbelief. "You took my insurance money. You ran, changed your name. You lied to everyone who trusted you." The room was frozen. Guests stared, unsure whether to intervene or flee. Emily's voice cracked. I loved you both. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Jason felt like he was being ripped in two. The woman he had called his angel, the one who had saved him from loneliness and grief, had a secret that shook the very foundation of his trust. Luke took a step forward. "You can't hide from the past. You can't just erase what you did. Not ever." Emily fell to her knees, clutching her bouquet. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to survive." Jason dropped to one knee beside her. "Emily, listen to me. We'll figure this out. But you have to tell the truth. All of it." She looked up at him, the pain in her eyes raw and haunting. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet." And then, before anyone could process what was happening, she bolted. Out the doors, down the steps, into the rain-soaked streets of Chicago. Jason ran after her, heart pounding, but she disappeared into the storm. All that remained was her veil, tangled in the streetlight where they had first met. Luke stayed behind, breathing heavily. "She'll come back," he muttered. "But nothing will ever be the same." Jason stood in the rain, the world around him silent except for the pounding of his heart and the storm that seemed to echo his own chaos. The angel he thought he had found had been a stranger in disguise, and the nightmare of the past had finally caught up to them. The church had emptied. Chairs were overturned, whispers lingered in the air like smoke, and the rain outside turned the streets into mirrors of chaos. Jason stood in the vestibule, soaked, his mind spinning. Luke remained behind, tense and wary. Emily was gone, vanished into the storm like a phantom. "You need to hear this," Luke said, voice low and cold. "Everything." Jason listened as Luke told his story, the truth Emily had hidden. 3 years ago, she had married him in a small Ohio town. Luke had been sick, struggling with a degenerative illness. Doctors had misdiagnosed him. Everyone, including Emily, had believed he would die. She had been desperate, terrified. When he recovered, she panicked, afraid of losing the life she had built, afraid of facing the consequences of abandoning him. "She took my insurance money," Luke said, anger simmering beneath his exhaustion. "Left me alone, told everyone I was dead. Changed her name. Started a new life in Chicago." Jason felt his stomach twist. The woman he had loved, the angel who had rescued him from grief, had built their entire relationship on lies. Luke continued, voice breaking. She didn't think I'd survive. She didn't think anyone would know. And now she's here, about to marry you." Jason's fists clenched. Rage. Disbelief. Sorrow. It all tangled inside him. "She didn't tell me," he said, voice tight. "Not a word. Every moment, every laugh, every promise." Luke shook his head. "I warned you, but you couldn't know. I tried." Jason stared at the wet street outside. His chest ached. The betrayal cut deeper than he had imagined. But then Luke said something unexpected. "I don't want to ruin your life, Jason. But she needs help. She can't face what she did alone." Jason's mind whirled. Help? How could she need help after everything? And yet, beneath the shock, beneath the anger, Jason realized he still cared. Somewhere in the rain, somewhere in the chaos, Emily was still running, terrified. Lost. Desperate. Jason looked at Luke. "Where is she?" Luke shook his head. "She ran. I don't know. But she'll come back. She always does." She can't escape herself forever. Jason's eyes burned with unshed tears. Love, betrayal, anguish. He didn't know which would define the next chapter. And in the silence that followed, one thought echoed in his mind. The woman he thought was his angel had never truly belonged to him. And the storm of the past was far from over. The rain hadn't stopped. It fell in thick sheets, soaking the cobblestones outside St. Mary's Church, turning them into slippery mirrors of the chaos within. Emily's veil, tangled in the streetlight where she and Jason first met, swayed like a ghost in the storm. Jason's heart hammered in his chest as he sprinted through the rain-soaked streets, calling her name. Emily. Wait. No response. Only the echoes of his own voice and the relentless pounding of rain. Jason rounded the corner, slipping on wet pavement, but still running. Each step felt like chasing a shadow. He found her car abandoned a few blocks away, doors wide open, engine running. The seatbelt was dangling, her engagement ring still glinting in the dashboard light. Emily, his voice broke. Where are you? The street was empty except for the storm and the occasional flicker of neon signs. Jason felt a sinking feeling. This was more than fear, more than panic. Something darker lurked. Hours passed. The police were called. Divers searched the nearby river, the park, the streets. No sign of her. Jason spent the night walking the rain-soaked city alone, repeating every word, every laugh, every touch. He kept asking himself, was she hurt? Did she leave by choice? Or is something else involved? Mia slept at her grandmother's, oblivious to the storm ripping through her father's life. Jason wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to explain that the woman they had loved, the angel he had trusted, might never return. The rain continued to fall, but he could no longer hear it. His mind was consumed with questions. Where had she gone? Why had she run? And most terrifying of all, would she ever come back? That night, Jason sat in his apartment, soaked to the bone from chasing shadows and memories. He held the photo Luke had sent him weeks ago, staring at it like it might answer the unanswerable. Outside, the wind whispered through the streets of Chicago. And somewhere, just beyond the veil of rain and neon, Emily moved, unseen, unreadable, a storm in her own right. For Jason Carter, the nightmare of love and betrayal was just beginning. The morning after the runaway, Jason didn't sleep. He wandered through the apartment, cold coffee in hand, staring at the empty space Emily had left behind. Every corner, every photograph, every little detail screamed at him. She was gone, and no one could tell him why. He called Luke again, desperation shaking his voice. Where could she be? You said she always comes back. Do you know anything? Luke hesitated. She's unpredictable. But she doesn't run without a reason. You need to think. What's chasing her? Jason's mind flashed to every small oddity. The midnight walks, the phone calls she never answered, the letters she burned. The pieces didn't add up. But the fear in her eyes on the wedding day, that was real. He drove through the city streets, searching the rain-slicked roads of Chicago, checking every familiar corner. The diner where they first met, the lake where they had walked, even the small Indiana town she had spoken about. Nothing. Hours passed. The city was emptying as evening approached, neon lights reflecting off wet asphalt. He stopped at a quiet bridge over the river, the wind whipping at his coat. He whispered her name into the night. Emily. The sound carried away, swallowed by the roar of traffic and rain. Jason's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. His heart leapt. Stop looking for me. Not everything is what it seems. He reread it. Not everything is what it seems. The words were chilling. Jason gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady his mind. The Emily he loved, the woman he had called his angel, she had secrets. Dark, dangerous secrets. He thought back to the photo Luke had sent, to the letters she had burned, to the pale hospital walls in the old photograph. Somewhere in the city, she was hiding, running, waiting, or maybe trying to protect someone, or herself, from something he couldn't yet understand. Jason drove faster, turning down alleyways, asking strangers, retracing every memory of their time together. Each lead felt hollow, each street darker than the last. By midnight, exhaustion clawed at him. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Because Emily had vanished into the shadows, and the clock was ticking. Somewhere in the dark streets of Chicago, Jason Carter realized that finding her wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival, hers, his, and the truth she was hiding. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the streets of Chicago were slick and empty, reflecting the orange glow of streetlights. Jason's car screeched to a halt outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. He had followed a trail of clues, a stranger's tip, a fleeting shadow, and that cryptic text. Not everything is what it seems. Inside, the warehouse was dark, the air thick with dust and echoes. Jason's heart pounded. Emily. His voice cracked, bouncing off the metal walls. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Her hair was damp, eyes wide, but there was a steel to her spine he hadn't seen before. "Jason," she whispered, but there was no warmth in her tone. "Why?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me the truth? About Luke, about everything." Emily's lips trembled. "I wanted to, I swear. But it wasn't safe. You don't understand what's at stake." "Safe?" Jason's voice broke. "Emily, you ran from me. From Mia. From everything." She took a step closer, eyes darting to the shadows. "I had to protect you. Protect everyone. Luke, he's not just my past. He's dangerous. If he knew I married you, he would have come after us." Jason froze. "Dangerous? What do you mean?" Emily swallowed hard. "The accident, the hospital, it wasn't real. Luke faked his death. I didn't know how to get away. I thought I could start over. And then, I fell in love with you." Jason staggered back, disbelief twisting his features. "So everything? Our life?" Her hand reached for his. "It was real, Jason. Every smile, every moment. But I couldn't tell you. I didn't know if he'd come for me, or for you." The warehouse door banged open behind her, and a shadow moved in the corner. Luke. Alive. Real. And angry. "I told you she's mine." Luke's voice roared. "You have no idea what she belongs to." Emily stepped between them. "No. Jason doesn't deserve this. I will not let you ruin him, or me again." Jason grabbed her hand. "Emily will face this. Together. No more running." Luke laughed bitterly. "You think it's that simple?" The tension exploded. Emily's secret, the lies, the danger, it all collided in a heartbeat. And as Luke stepped closer, Jason realized the truth. The woman he loved, the angel he thought he had found, had a life he could never fully control and a past that could destroy them all. Emily looked at Jason, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jason held her close, knowing one thing. Their story was far from over. Outside, the city hummed in the quiet aftermath of the storm, but inside that warehouse, the calm was only temporary. Because when secrets run this deep, nothing, and no one is safe. The warehouse was silent, except for the distant rumble of thunder outside. Rain streaked the windows, casting fractured shadows across the concrete floor. Jason stood with Emily at his side, her hand trembling in his. Luke's presence loomed like a storm cloud, a constant reminder that the past could destroy everything. Jason's mind raced. Every truth, every lie, every stolen moment of happiness had led to this. And now a choice had to be made. "Emily," Jason said, voice firm but gentle, "you have to tell me everything. No more running, no more secrets. I can't help if I don't know the full story." She looked at him, eyes glistening with tears. I'm afraid, Jason. Afraid of what he'll do, afraid of losing you." "But," her voice broke, "I can't keep hiding." Luke's gaze hardened. "Stop pretending. She belongs to me." Emily stepped between them, trembling but resolute. "No, not anymore." Jason's heart ached at the fire in her voice. He wanted to hold her close, shield her from everything, and somehow, he knew she needed him to stand firm. "Luke," Jason said, tone steady, "this ends now. I don't know everything about your past, Emily, but I know what she means to me. If you hurt her, or try to take her again, I swear." Luke's eyes flickered, anger and something else he tried to hide. He stepped back, calculating. Emily's gaze met Jason's. "I have to make a choice," she whispered. "Not just between him and you, but between the life I lost and the life I want." Jason's chest tightened. "Whatever you choose, I'll be with you. But you need to decide." For a long moment, she didn't speak. The rain outside battered the building, the wind howling like a warning. Then Emily slowly reached for Jason's hand. I want to try. With you. I don't know what the future holds, but I can't go back to the past." Luke's face darkened. "This isn't over." Emily looked at him, tears streaked down her cheeks. "It is for me. You lost me the day you faked your death. I forgive you, but I can't live in that shadow anymore." Jason pulled her close, but just as relief began to settle in, the warehouse door slammed open. A figure appeared in the shadows, someone neither of them expected. Emily froze. Jason's grip tightened. The figure stepped forward, voice low and chilling. "You think it's over? You don't even know the half of it." And just like that, the story that had begun with rain, hope, and love ended with a new shadow, a new question. Who had followed them? And what did they want? The storm outside raged on, but inside, Jason and Emily realized one terrifying truth. Their nightmare was far from over. The city held its breath.